Prologue, Forlorn Hope. Rain made the whole street look like a broken mirror. Candy walked beside me, heels splashing through puddles that smelled of oil and cheap dreams. Her hair caught the neon in strips of pink and blue. She laughed at something small, probably the way I kept scanning rooftops like I expected someone to shoot at us. And the sound hit me like a pulse of warmth in all that cold. Forlorn Hope. Half the sign outside was dead, so it just read for hope. Maybe that was the joke. Twinkle Two Stars always said the place was a museum for the kind of people nobody wants statues of, and he wasn't wrong. Inside smelled like gun oil, smoke, and hangovers. The bass from a jukebox rolled through the floor like thunder underwater. I spotted Twinkle first. Hard to miss a man built like a wall and grin that could sell mercy to a hitman. Next to him sat a mountain in a tracksuit, arms like industrial machinery. The kind of man who doesn't talk because nothing worth saying could sound right coming out of him. Must have been Igor the Soviet. My money said Solo, probably the kind who sleeps standing up. Definitely one of those, I'm a solo because I can bench a truck types. Sure, Chumba, keep dreaming. Candy leaned closer. Friendly crowd. Sure, I said, if you like chrome and poor decisions. We slid into a booth that creaked in protest. I set my boots on the table. Candy rolled her eyes but didn't tell me to stop. Across the room, 3 poser punks strutted toward us, fresh implants, cheap bravado. One slammed his beer down on our table hard enough to splash. Seats taken, he said. Yeah, I told him, by us. He glared. I smiled, slow and polite. I grabbed his beer and said, thanks for the drink, Chum. You brought one for my friends too, right? It's rude to only buy for the pretty one. I nodded toward Candy. Her lips twitched, hiding a laugh. The punks weren't smart enough to know when they'd lost. The biggest one puffed up, hand twitching near his jacket. I let my coat fall open just enough for the pistol grip to catch the light. You can buy us around, I said softly. Or you can leave. I'm easy either way. They left. People always do when they realize the smile isn't going to fade. A voice like a gunshot behind me. Good to see you haven't lost your charm. Twinkle's laugh followed it. He waved a cigar, the smoke curling through the neon haze. The mountain next to him didn't move, just watched. The Soviet, now I was certain about that. Candy brushed my hand under the table, quick and invisible. You didn't have to scare them that much, she murmured. Sure I did. I could still feel the adrenaline humming in my wrist implants, the quiet vibration that never really went away anymore. Twinkle pushed through the crowd toward us, coat flaring like a stage curtain. Girls, he said, voice smooth as whiskey. Glad you came. Got something that needs doing. Easy money. Candy's smile faltered. I felt her hand tighten around mine. Easy money never was. I fucking hate that expression. Before I could answer, the bouncer stepped out of the shadows, tall woman, muscles like armor, eyes calm and unamused. She looked us over, then at Twinkle. Marion is ready for you now, she said. Chapter 1. Glass dolls do not cry. The city below was a living circuit board, neon veins pulsing between black towers, electric arteries moving synthetic life from district to district. From the 68th floor of Kendach's executive arcology, the world looked small enough to own. And from behind the reinforced glass, a little girl believed her family already did. Akiko Nakamura was born into light that never dimmed. Artificial dawn at 6, simulated night at 22, filtered air that smelled of citrus and antiseptic. Even laughter echoed differently here, thin, precise, like an error tone on a clean system. But Akiko still laughed. She sang to her reflection in the window, twirled in polished corridors until her shoes squeaked, and pulled faces at her shadow on boardroom glass. Her mother, Rieka, corrected her softly in public. A. Nakamura must always appear composed, and punished her wordlessly in private. Stillness drills, knees locked, hands flat against thighs, eyes on a single point until the ache in her back turned to fire. Her father, Daesuk, spoke in quarterly cadence, posture, diction, projection, lineage. They were sculptors and she was marble. Their touch never trembled. At 6, she learned to bow at a perfect 45 degrees. At 8, she corrected her tutor's grammar and was made to stand motionless by the panoramic window until the sun program slid from morning to late afternoon. At 10, She watched a shipment schedule appear on the wrong ledger and disappear from the right one. The word logistics gained a taste. Expensive bourbon over blood. Don't romanticize the city, Ryuka would say, seeing Akiko's forehead pressed to the glass. It's just chemicals and light. Akiko did anyway. The dollhouse. Childhood was rationed like vitamins, administered and monitored. Piano at 7, etiquette at 8, finance modules at 9, speeches recorded and reviewed for flaws of temperament. A camera watched her do homework. Another watched her sleep. A third watched the first two. The punishments were elegant. A single fork placed 1 centimeter off-center on a dinner table and left there until she corrected it. A dessert withheld not because of grades, but because her smile had been too wide. Hands held under cool water to steady the nerves after a failed presentation. No marks. Nothing an outsider could name. Only the message, your body is a device you do not own. When she disobeyed, the consequences wore silk. Her mother's voice never rose. Her father never needed to touch her. Doors simply failed to open. Media access quietly throttled. Hologame privileges revoked. On her 8th birthday, the elevator stopped 1 floor shy of the rooftop garden and stayed there for an hour while Ryuka explained the difference between wanting and deserving. Be still, Akiko told herself when the walls felt too close. Be small, be perfect. Then they can't see you breathing. But perfection invited more eyes. Once late at night, voices bled through the office door she was never to open. Her father's tone, pleasant. The words, knives, syndicate names disguised as partners. Deterrence disguised as compliance. Her mother laughed, warm, polite. A chill crept into Akiko's bones that hot showers didn't chase away. The next morning at breakfast, Ryuka asked about piano fingering with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Daisuke forwarded a training schedule to Akiko's optic without looking up. The message tag read, mandatory. The academy. The Kendachi Corporate Academy was less a school than a foundry. Children of executives marched through modules under fluorescent hum. Finance, marketing, corporate law, speechcraft and etiquette, then the other track. A wooden sword fit Akiko's hand like it had been waiting there. The first strike sent a tremor up her arm that felt like truth. She liked the weight, the line from heel to wrist, the clean geometry of a proper cut. Pain came next, and she found she didn't mind it. Bruises meant she'd done something real. Again, the instructor said, emotionless. Again, again, again. Eyes forward. Breathe on the strike. Stop when I say stop. In the mirror-lined dojo, she learned to love the moment just before the blade halted. Control held to the edge of disaster. Her body obeyed when her mind stopped arguing. Precision was freedom, and freedom tasted like the one thing she controlled that no one could take, when to stop. The academy layered disciplines. Grappling, disarms, close quarters knives, presentation polish. And then the psychological track, group drills designed to erase the self from the team, praise that never quite landed, consequences that arrived 3 days after the infraction so you understood it was not anger, but system. They taught her how to sit through humiliation without looking away. They called it resilience. She called it practice dying. By 12, the silly, singing child showed up only when she was alone. By 13, even alone felt supervised. She started closing her eyes in showers and pretending the water, at least, didn't belong to anyone. On the mat, she grew faster, sharper. Instructors stopped correcting and started timing. She hit a point where hesitation felt like a stain she could scrub away with repetitions. Some nights her arms shook too hard to hold chopsticks. She learned to eat left-handed and hid her right. Control is survival, the academy taught. Control is pleasure, her body learned. Static on a forbidden channel. It happened at 14, between modules. A locked feed opened in a hidden folder on her school terminal, someone sloppy or someone kind. Headlines, old footage, urban myths, black and white video of a man moving through smoke with both hands steady, a voiceover that didn't name him because it didn't need to. Morgan Blackhand. The first clip was grainy and short, a firefight on a rooftop. The man moved like the geometry Akiko had been taught, only freer. No permission needed. The second clip showed after. He holstered. He walked away, not toward a debrief, a boardroom, a parent just away. She watched in the glow of a terminal that thought it was sleeping. Again. He's not owned, she thought, chest tight with a hunger she didn't have words for. He breathes because he decides to. After that, she found other fragments. Interviews carefully edited by networks, eyewitness rumor feeds, amateur cuts of gunfire and silence. She wasn't interested in the guns. She was interested in the distance, how no one's leash reached him. One night she whispered into her pillow, "I'll be free," and flinched as if the walls could hear. They probably could. The fracture. The academy sharpened. Tests changed shape. Students were taken to experience labs, white rooms where lights dimmed until a heartbeat filled the air and authority spoke from everywhere at once. Sometimes the lights flashed bright and a voice whispered praise until it felt like a drug. Sometimes the floor dropped a centimeter and you grabbed for balance and learned that surprise could be installed in your spine. Each session ended with tea. Debrief. They taught her to mimic emotion as needed. They taught her that apology was a tool and remorse was a bug. At home, Akiko watched a classmate transferred after failing a compliance test. No one said expelled. No one used the word disappeared. Ryuka signed a document with perfect penmanship. Daesuk told Akiko it would be a lesson. "What lesson?" she asked, the blade of her voice too bright. "That you are fortunate," he said, and the word fortunate landed like a threat. She smiled and bowed, and went to her room and watched Blackhand footage until her eyes burned. Solo, she mouthed, the syllables a spell, not a title, a verb. Haruto Ishida. It didn't start with a touch. It started with a question. He found her in the training hall after hours, hands raw from Bakken strikes, uniform immaculate because imperfections had consequences. "You stay later than the others," Haruto Ishida said, leaning against the doorway like he belonged everywhere. His suit was understated, his age disguised by the soft lighting. "Discipline or defiance?" Akiko straightened. "Discipline, sir." Sometimes they're the same thing. A hint of a smile, not kind, knowing. He introduced himself as a mentor in strategic development. He asked about her modules, her ambitions. He said ambitions like the word wasn't a punishment. When she deflected with perfect corporate phrasework, he waved a hand as if brushing dust from silk. "Drop the script," he said softly. "Tell me what you want." No one had ever asked. She didn't answer that night. He didn't press. He simply left a glass of water by the practice rack on his way out. The next evening there was coffee. Later, tea. "You're wasted in presentation protocol," he said a week later, as if he'd been thinking about it all day. "You have edge. They're grinding it smooth." She excused herself, bowed, left. In the elevator, her hands shook. It was never just the words. It was the attention calibrated to the exact frequency of her hunger. He appeared when she finished training. He listened like listening was a gift. He told her old Kendachi stories, the unofficial kind. And when he spoke about the future, he said your path as if it were hers to choose. He was married. That fact existed like a painting in a hallway you walked past every day until you forgot it was there. He did not tell her she was beautiful. He told her she was wasted. It had the same effect. 16 is an age made of flammable material. One spark and there's a fire. She didn't think of herself as naive. She thought of herself as precise, and precision is a poor shield when someone learns your rhythms. She started sending him drafts of her reports, unofficially, on encrypted channels he provided. He returned them with comments, sharper, cut the line about team cohesion. He invited her to a quiet corner of a quiet lounge where executives gathered to celebrate deterrent success. He ordered club soda for her as if she drank in those rooms every night. When he asked about her family, he didn't ask the way tutors did. He asked like he wanted to know where it hurt. "That must be difficult," he said gently, when she mentioned Ryuka's stillness drills. "To be so controlled." He sees me, she thought, dizzy with relief and shame. He sees me and doesn't look away. One night, after a training session that left her hands trembling, he kissed her. She replied. He started to slowly and gently undress her. She allowed it. Soon they were laying naked on the training hall floor, entwined on each other's bodies. He sees me and wants me. Later, she remembered this night, its ultimate teaching. Pleasure is control. When they left, he offered his sleeve for the elevator call button so she wouldn't smudge the panel with blood. "That's not necessary," she said. "It's considerate," he said, and she hated how her chest warmed at the word. They were careful, they were not cautious, two different things. Haruto never had to say mine. His attention said it for him. Riene. It took Riene Ishida 1 week to see what others pretended not to. Sharp eyes, sharper ambition. She built her place in Kendachi with a scalpel and the patience of a surgeon. When she confronted Haruto, she didn't shout. She rearranged the air in the room so breathing felt like asking permission. "You humiliated me," her posture said. "You endangered us," her silence added. Haruto tried charm. Riene countered with a ledger. Akiko didn't witness the conversation. She felt the aftershocks. Rooms cooled. Doors that opened for months began to require credentials she didn't possess. A rumor with her name in it changed shape every time it passed. Intern, protege, project. The word girl used like a weapon. Haruto overdosed a week later. Accidental, the report said, and the word echoed like a joke the city tells the same way every year. Riene inherited his holdings, including a boutique security firm with a clean white logo and an ugly soul. Shinsei Solutions. Before the ashes settled, Akiko received a single message, unsigned, unnecessary. "You took what was mine. Now I take what was his." The system did the rest. Her mentors stopped replying. Her instructors started marking her promising but uncooperative. Ryuka's punishments shifted from stillness to disappearance. 3 days without scheduled classes or access to common areas, lost time she wasn't allowed to name. Daisuk's voice acquired an edge that meant the decision had already been made. "You will apologize," he said at breakfast, not looking at her, slicing a piece of engineered melon with surgical precision. "You will accept reassignment. You will learn." "To what end?" she asked, voice very calm, because she could feel control slipping, and control is how you live. "So you can sell me smarter." Ryuka's fork paused. Daisuk's eyes finally met hers. For a moment, she thought he might stand and slap her face, and some part of her wanted him to, because then at least it would be honest. "Fortunate," he said softly, the way he had when her classmate disappeared. "You are fortunate we still see potential." She smiled, because that was safer than bleeding in public. That night, alone, she watched Blackhand footage until the shapes on the screen were just light and breath, and the idea of a man walking away because no one could make him stop. They can't own what they can't find, she thought. They can't leash what they can't touch. Fear came. It tested the windows. It whispered about the ground below. She let it pass through like a storm through a hard system, took stock of what she had, training, strength, a mind wired to notice every exit, a body that remembered where to stop. She packed a small bag, cheap street clothes bought with pocket cash for disguised drills, a cred stick she'd skimmed from a budget she was never supposed to see, a comb, a lipstick she had never yet worn. Then she slipped into the service corridors of the arcology and walked. The escape. She didn't run. Running is for prey. The elevator to the freight level required a maintenance code. She had learned it 3 years ago by watching an engineer's fingers and memorizing the rhythm. The door hissed open onto concrete and cold air. Cameras watched. She watched them back and stepped through their blind timings. The floor had a seam she'd noticed when she was 9. The seam led to a hatch. The hatch led to a service catwalk that smelled of oil and rain. The last door opened to night that wasn't a program. The air had texture down here, exhaust and spice and the intimate wet of real weather. Lights bled across standing water in colors the towers sanitized out of their decor. Ultraviolet, sickly green, flamboyant pink. The world sounded uncompressed. Laughter, anger, bargaining, music bleeding from 3 different doors. Voices overlapped like a language she didn't speak yet but understood. She stood for a long time, breathing until her ribs hurt. Don't cry, she told herself, and heard her mother's voice in the order. Cry later, she told herself, and heard Blackhand's silence in the permission. Somewhere in Kabuki, a sign flickered, violet neon drowning in rain. The club name did not matter yet. The light did. It painted her hands the color of bruises and made her feel visible in a way that didn't require permission. Her optic pinged with an incoming call from her father. She let it ring, then muted the world with a small gesture she'd learned from people who would have said no if they knew they were teaching her. The call died. The quiet after it felt like someone had removed a blade from her throat. She took a step, another. No one stopped her, which meant for this moment she was hers. First breath of the city. She found a pawn shop that smelled like solder and sweat, and traded her school-issue datapad for a battered street phone and a knife that had been cleaned badly. She bought noodles from a woman with 3 gold teeth and a tattoo of the moon on her neck. The noodles burned her tongue and made her cry in a way discipline never had. Night City looked different from the ground. Bigger, closer, less glossy. She realized with the dizzy shock of someone switching gravity that she had never actually stood in rain without a roof between it and her. She tilted her head back and let it wash her clean. She needed a name that wasn't attached to a ledger. Yumiko arrived in her mind like a word she had always been about to remember. It sounded like a secret and a dare. It tasted like the edge where Slice and Dice would hum a few years later when the part of her that loved control learned to love the control of danger. Not yet. For now, she was a girl with precision for a heartbeat and hunger for a plan. She slept in a cheap capsule with a door that stuck and felt safer than all the unlocked spaces of the tower. She woke to the city trying to sell her things. She said no and meant it. She said yes only to the things that led to a stage, to an illusion, to a way to use the mask they had strapped to her face as a weapon she could finally aim for herself. She learned how to walk like prey and look like prize. She learned the hours a club asks for soft and the hours it pays for hard. She learned, without needing anyone to tell her, that the doll people buy is not the girl who breathes behind her eyes. From a kiosk selling bootlegs and legends, she bought an old chip with scavenged footage. Mercs in alleys, chrome saints in gunfire. A rumor named Morgan Blackhand walking away from an explosion like a man leaving a conversation he didn't like. She pressed the chip to her temple, in a capsule that smelled of cheap detergent and hope. Solo, she mouthed, touching her throat where her voice lived. Not for them, for me. Outside, the rain turned from hard to soft. Neon quivered in puddles. Somewhere not far away, a singer's voice climbed out of bad speakers and made the night lean closer to listen. Akiko stepped into the violet spill of a club's sign and felt the floor vibrate with bass, with breath, with the kind of life you have to move your body to catch. So this is what living feels like, she whispered to no one. Then she went inside. Chapter 2, The Doll Learns to Dance. Rain glittered on the street like broken data streams. Akiko stood beneath a half-dead sign, the violet light pulsing against her skin every few seconds. Open/closed/open. She had nowhere else to go. The club's bass was a heartbeat that reached her before the door did, a vibration that promised warmth, noise, and anonymity. Inside, the air was too hot, smelling of perfume, metal, and ozone. Dancers moved through the light like ghosts learning to be human again. They were free in the way holograms were free, shining, but never truly there. Akiko watched from the shadows, still in the borrowed coat that hid the Kendachi logo on her wrist. A manager noticed her and, mistaking composure for confidence, handed her a rag. If you can stand the noise, clean the tables. She bowed out of habit, caught herself halfway, and muttered a thank you. That night she earned enough to sleep on a cot behind the bar, the music still shaking the floor beneath her dreams. By the third night, she knew every song. By the fifth, she knew every dancer's timing. When one of them quit without notice, the manager asked if she could fill in. The outfit was small, sequins, glass heels, a wig that smelled of someone else's perfume, but it fit. The first step onto the stage was like stepping into another body. The lights hit her hard, blue, pink, ultraviolet, every color she'd been forbidden to wear. Her first instinct was to freeze, to stand still until the world stopped demanding. But stillness here was different. It wasn't obedience. It was command. When she moved deliberately, each gesture calculated the way she once planned strikes with a sword. Every breath, every tilt of her head sent a ripple through the room. The crowd followed her rhythm without realizing it. Control, she thought. Different stage, same rule. A laugh escaped her then, soft, accidental. It carried over the bass, and people thought it was part of the act. She leaned into it. The rhythm built, slow and deliberate, and Akiko started moving the way she had once fought. Precise, calculated, each motion beginning before the last one ended. No wasted gestures. No vulnerability that wasn't intentional. In the mirror behind the bar, she caught her reflection. A doll's face that wasn't hers. And for the first time in years, she didn't hate what she saw. They're watching Yumiko, she thought. They'll never see Akiko again. When the song ended, she stayed perfectly still as the lights faded, holding the silence until the crowd's applause broke it like a wave. She bowed, not to them, to herself. They called her Yumiko. The name tasted like lacquer and sugar. She became a porcelain doll painted with movement, her laughter timed with the music. Each night the applause came a little sooner. Each night she felt less like an intruder and more like a performer mastering her routine. The girl who had been molded for obedience was now sculpting herself. The show had ended hours ago, but the music still clung to the air like perfume that didn't know when to leave. Akiko sat on the dressing room counter, feet bare, her stage wig hanging beside her like something molted and forgotten. A voice came from behind her. "You keep moving like that, doll, and they're gonna start paying extra just to watch you breathe." Akiko turned. The woman in the doorway had red hair like neon flame and a grin that could sell chaos. A cigarette hung from her fingers. "I wasn't moving," Akiko said. "Exactly," the woman winked. "That's what makes it work." For a second, they just watched each other in the mirror. Two reflections in cracked glass, one painted porcelain, one lit cigarette. Then she leaned closer, stealing Akiko's eyeliner pencil without asking. "What's your real name?" Akiko hesitated. "Yumiko." The woman laughed. "Sure it is." She drew a small heart on the mirror, handed the pencil back, and said, "You can call me Candy. Everyone does." Akiko didn't correct her when Candy mispronounced arigato. She just smiled. A real smile, quick and strange. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like failure. Days blurred into weeks. Akiko and Candy shared cigarettes, gossip, and the kind of half-truths that passed for intimacy in Night City. Candy was sweet, loud, and catastrophically literal. She took every joke at face value and every kindness as gospel. When customers leered, she laughed. When the lights burned too hot, she said the heat made her shine brighter. Akiko envied that simplicity even as she protected it. They became inseparable. Candy called them sisters. Akiko didn't correct that either. Some nights after last call, they lay side by side on the dressing room floor listening to the bass hum through the walls. Candy would hum a melody she was writing, words half-formed, dreaming of the day she'd sing on a real stage. Akiko would listen, tracing the rhythm in her head like a heartbeat she couldn't quite match. She told herself it was friendship. Her pulse argued otherwise. Money vanished as fast as it came. Rent, food, upgrades. The club paid enough to survive, but not enough to live. So when one of the regulars offered a private booking, she said yes before thinking. An escort, he called it, easy work, polite company. Akiko treated it like reconnaissance. She observed posture, tone, the micro-hesitations that revealed fear or desire. People talked too much when they felt seen. She learned which questions loosened tongues, which silences made them fill the void. By morning, she left with more than cash, she left with secrets. The clients were different. Some of the men or women just wanted company and something beautiful that listened their worries. Other clients wanted someone to sleep with. Akiko played her part to be the doll they wanted and gave them what they wished for, making sure that she was the one setting boundaries, even when she was the merchandise. Each client was another lesson in power. Every touch was negotiation, every smile a contract. She began to feel the old control returning, reshaped into something quieter but sharper. The wooden sword had become a whisper and a glance. She spent her earnings on training, shooting ranges, back alley drills, reflex boosters. The first time she held a real gun, her hands didn't shake. The recoil felt familiar, like the echo of her old blade. At night she danced. At dawn she practiced. The line between performance and combat blurred until she couldn't tell which came first. Candy noticed the change before anyone else. "You move different," she said one morning, studying Akiko's reflection. "Like you're listening to music nobody else hears." "Maybe I am," Akiko replied. Candy shrugged, satisfied with the answer, and went back to fixing her hair. Akiko watched her, thinking how easy it would be to reach out, to tell her that she was the only thing in this city that still felt real. But truth was dangerous, and Akiko had learned to survive by performing lies. Months later, Candy fell asleep beside her after a late show. The room smelled of makeup and cheap synth champagne. Akiko lay awake, watching the neon from outside crawl across Candy's face in slow waves. Violet, blue, pink. She memorized the pattern like a code she might one day need to crack. She whispered, "You're the only good thing in the city." But Candy was already dreaming. Maybe that was safer. Outside the club, Night City kept breathing. Machines, rain, traffic, life. A man sat at the far end of the bar nursing a glass of amber light. Big shoulders, bright smile, eyes too sharp for the expression he wore. He watched the stage even after it was empty, like he could see something the rest of the crowd had missed. When the bartender asked if he wanted another, he chuckled. "Not tonight, I just came to see the future." He left a generous tip and stepped into the rain. Akiko woke to the sound of thunder and the faint tremor of music still echoing through the floor. She didn't know that the man who had watched her from the shadows would soon call himself her fixer. She only knew that the doll she had built to survive was learning to dance on her own terms, and that control, once again, felt like freedom. She used to dream of freedom like it was a place. Now she understood it was just another mask, and she'd learned how to wear it better than anyone. Chapter 3. The Doll Draws Blood. Night City was still half asleep when Akiko woke. The club's lights had died hours ago, but the smell of smoke and perfume hung in the air like ghosts reluctant to leave. Candy was still snoring softly beside her, one arm flung over the sheets, red hair a spilled halo against the pillow. The window was cracked open just enough to let the sound of rain sneak in, a rhythm that matched Akiko's breathing. She lay still for a long time, watching the faint flicker of neon move across Candy's back. The world outside looked unreal through the haze. Sometimes she imagined the entire city was a projection, a place that existed only because someone kept paying the power bill. When she finally rose, she left without waking her. The walk to her capsule was short and wet, the kind of rain that never really stopped, just changed texture. In the elevator, her reflection looked like someone else. Sleek hair, controlled expression, the faintest hint of glitter from last night's performance still clinging to her neck. Yumiko again, already resetting. The club's manager had passed her a name and an address on a chipped shard of hollow glass, a client who paid well and didn't make trouble. Easy money. That phrase was always a lie, but she needed the cash. Most of her savings had already gone into the new hardware, a pair of wrist-mounted mono-whips buried under her forearms, the kind of military tech you only saw on combat models or corporate bodyguards. She would later call them slice and dice, half joke, half warning. Not swords, never swords. Blades reminded her too much of Kendachi, of the academy, of lessons barked like orders. The whips were cleaner, faster, hers alone. Self-defense, she told herself. And if the day came when Candy ever needed protecting, she'd be ready. The apartment was somewhere in Charter Hill. Clean, expensive, the kind of place that smelled of filtered air. He greeted her in a voice that was too smooth, offered a drink that tasted like nothing. Conversation was the usual game. Small talk, feigned curiosity, a hint of corporate brag. Akiko played along, nodding every tell in his eyes, every flicker of insecurity he tried to hide. When he reached to touch her arm without asking, she moved just enough to make it look like coincidence. When he tried again, she smiled. Control the room, control yourself. The rules from the Kendachi days still applied. But then he said it, one sentence, casual, ugly. He called her property. It was the same tone her father had used when discussing quarterly projections. Something inside her froze and then split. He moved closer, confident now, sure she was his to take. The air seemed to thicken. Time slowed to the space between heartbeats. Her hand flexed at her wrist, a practiced twitch of fingers that triggered the hidden implant. The monowhip unfolded with a faint shimmer, invisible line vibrating at the edge of hearing. A whisper more than a sound, a hum felt deep in the bones. A single movement, reflex, precision, and grace. The line of light cut through the air, then silence. The first red smile she had ever given bloomed across his throat. He dropped, eyes wide. The body folded before it hit the floor. The smell of ozone replaced perfume. For a long moment, she didn't move. She had killed the man. The room buzzed with the echo of that hum, a thin, metallic shriek like feedback from a broken speaker. Then she smiled, not out of cruelty, but recognition. For the first time since she'd run from the towers, she felt completely in control. That smile never left. She cleaned the scene with the same discipline she'd once used to polish a blade. Gloves, wipes, steady breath. The noise of the city outside kept perfect time. When she was done, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the streak of light the whip had burned into the wall. It looked like handwriting, her new signature. Later, back in her capsule, she replayed the memory in her head. That hum before the silence. That sound was her name now. Feedback. She met Twinkle 2 stars the next evening. He was leaning against the bar at the club like he'd been carved there, a grin that almost hid the calculation in his eyes. He was huge, shoulders like armor, laughter like low thunder. When she approached, he didn't leer or flinch. He just looked her over once, then said, "You handled yourself cleanly last night." Akiko froze. "You were watching." "Watching's part of my job," he said, setting a half-empty glass aside. "In recruiting, I don't judge the reasons, I judge the results." He slid a data chip across the counter. "You've got precision, discipline, and something to prove. If you're going to keep doing what you did, you might as well get paid for it." Akiko stared at the chip, then at him. "And what are you offering?" He smiled, wide and easy. "Work, direction, a place where control's worth more than obedience." She took the chip without another word. Twinkle laughed, soft and knowing. "Name." "Feedback," she said. He nodded. "Figures." That night, she sat in the dressing room with Candy, pretending the world hadn't changed. Candy was chattering about a new song, something bright and defiant. Akiko watched her hands move as she spoke, animated, alive. She wanted to reach out to tell her everything, to ask for something she couldn't name. But she didn't. She just smiled, the same smile that had followed her from that room. Candy caught it and tilted her head. "You okay, Aki?" "Yeah," Akiko said softly. "Just listening to the music." A week later, Twinkle handed her a job. "Simple one," he said. "Corpo slimeball who preys on his own staff. Nothing public, just correction." Akiko nodded. It sounded almost righteous, which was rare coming from a man like him. But the target's penthouse had tighter grid locks than she could crack. Cameras, biometric gates. Too much tech for a girl who preferred things she could cut. She spent 2 nights tracing chatter through kabuki bars and backroom feeds, listening instead of speaking. Eventually, a name floated up in a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear: Neo Cloud. A net ghost who hated corporations almost as much as he loved bad noodles. She burned the last of her credit to trace a signal and sent a single message: "Need access. Discretion paid extra." The reply came hours later. Static first, then a face on her hollow screen, round, unshaven, surrounded by the glow of too many monitors. "You really need better encryption, princess," he said, mouth full of noodles. "I could see your trail from orbit." Akiko's hand twitched toward the whip control before she realized he wasn't physically there. "Who are you?" "Someone who doesn't like corpos," he said, "and someone who noticed you don't either." He dropped a data packet into her inbox. Trace scrubbers, spoof keys, a line of code labeled gift. "Why help me?" she asked. He grinned, grease on his fingers. "Because I like watching people break their chains. Besides, you're interesting. You cut people. I cut data. We both make suits bleed." The connection flickered out, leaving only his tag behind. A a pixelated cloud drifting through digital rain. She looked at the frozen image a moment longer, then exhaled. Princess. She'd let that one slide, once. Later that night, Akiko walked home alone through Kabuki. Neon puddles rippled under her boots. The hum of the city matched the hum she carried inside. She thought of Candy's laughter, of Twinkle's easy grin, of Neo's ghost in the machine. All of them orbiting the same gravity she'd become. She wasn't a doll anymore. She wasn't a product of Kendachi or anyone else. She was becoming a weapon tuned to her own rhythm. And somewhere beneath the static of the city, she swore she could still hear that first sound, the razor-thin note of a whip cutting air, the feedback of freedom. Chapter 4, Feedback. Rain painted the city in static. Night City's lights had always been cruelly beautiful, but lately Akiko had stopped trying to tell where the reflection ended and the real thing began. Somewhere down there, another contract had just ended cleanly. She could still feel the echo of the shot humming in her bones, the pulse of her Karensikov winding down like the cooling of an engine. The implant didn't make her faster. It made everyone else slower, like the world finally matched her heartbeat. She remembered the first time she woke after the installation. The world had changed tempo. The first time she tested it, reflex mode on, a falling scalpel hung in the air like a raindrop. She plucked it between her fingers and smiled. Control. Absolute. She flicked the safety back on the pistol and watched the bodyguard scramble in the rain below. The mark was gone, erased so precisely it almost felt artistic. Feedback, that was what they called her now. She had picked the name herself after the first time the monowhip sang and the silence screamed back. She liked how it sounded. Sharp, clean, inevitable. Her agent rang. Twinkle. She answered. Nice work, clean, you ever sleep, Twinkle said. Sometimes when the noise stops, Akiko replied. But the noise never stopped if Candy wasn't there. The eddies she earned didn't last long. Most went to upgrades or ammunition, a few to the small, ordinary luxuries she couldn't name. Decent coffee, music, a new dress Candy insisted she try on. Candy always said she needed color. Akiko always pretended to believe her. After the job, she didn't go home. She ended up at Candy's place instead, the way she always did when the noise in her head wouldn't fade. Candy was half asleep on the couch, violin still resting against her knees. The city lights coming through the blinds striped her hair in gold and blue. Akiko sat down on the floor beside her and waited until Candy stirred. Bad night, Candy murmured without opening her eyes. Busy, Akiko said. For a while, they listened to the hum of rain on the glass. Candy's fingers found hers without looking. They stayed like that, hand to hand, until Akiko felt her heartbeat slow. She could have said it then, 3 words, easy to form, impossible to survive. Instead, she traced the lines on Candy's palm with her thumb and whispered, "You should sleep." Candy smiled in the dark. The scent of her hair was always the same, sweet, human, and real in a city that was not. Only if you stay. They talked about small things. Twinkle's last job offer, a club booking, Neo's latest message full of bad jokes and better code. The conversation circled, comfortable. When Candy finally fell asleep beside her on the couch, Akiko lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the city outside was a low note beneath Candy's breathing. She wanted to tell her what that sound meant. Safety, gravity, everything she didn't have words for. But every time she imagined saying it, she saw the moment after, Candy's face pulling away, the distance, the silence. So she stayed quiet like always. Twinkle 2 Stars was the only one who ever tried to talk about it, the way she lived, the rhythm she'd found in violence. "You're starting to enjoy it," he told her once, eyes half hidden behind the smoke from his cigar. "That's when you need to worry." She shrugged. "You taught me to be efficient." "I taught you to survive. There's a difference." He was still the one who called when something needed doing right. High-end hits, clean extractions, delicate work that didn't look like murder on the reports. He liked that she was quiet, precise, professional. He also liked that she didn't ask questions. Sometimes, though, he'd pour 2 drinks and say, "One day you're going to have to decide if you're a machine or a person." She never answered. Machines didn't need to. Neo Cloud's voice was the opposite of Twinkle's, lazy, half amused, always a hum in her ear whenever she needed him. Princess, he called her, like it was a joke only he was allowed to make. You've got a half-dozen cameras on you, and I'm the only one keeping you pretty. She'd roll her eyes, then stop talking and do your job. I am doing my job, multitasking. He'd saved her a dozen times with code and misdirection, but he never bragged. When she teased him about being a hero, he just said, "Nah, I just like watching the bad guys lose their toys." That was Neo, messy, brilliant, buried in cables and laughter. She trusted him, though she'd never say it out loud. Candy's world had exploded into light. She wasn't just the wide-eyed dancer anymore. She was a performer, a name on posters, a voice people paid to hear. Clubs filled, drinks sold, and she glowed under stage lights like something untouchable. Akiko watched from the crowd, hood up, nursing synth whiskey. Candy's violin screamed through speakers, and something in Akiko's chest matched its frequency. After shows, they still met in small apartments, floor cluttered with gear and half-empty bottles. Candy talked about music, about fame, about fear. Akiko listened, sometimes smiled, sometimes brushed a strand of red hair from her friend's cheek. Words never reached the truth between them. Maybe they didn't need to. One night, Candy said, "You ever think we'll get out of this city?" Akiko answered, "We already did, we just never left." The years folded into each other. Contracts came and went. Sometimes she caught herself thinking of the girl she'd been, the one who still believed freedom and violence were opposites. That girl was gone now, replaced by something colder and more honest. A street hit in Watson. One target, 2 shots, one witness who never spoke again. A convoy ambush in Santo Domingo. She moved through smoke like choreography. A corpo extraction where she carried a bleeding client across rooftops, while Candy's voice played in her earpiece, singing "Hold On to the Night." Each job felt less like violence and more like music. Rhythm, timing, silence between beats. The city started whispering her handle with respect and a little fear. Feedback. The echo you heard right before the end. Yet the city didn't know who was the girl behind that handle. No one knew that feedback was some ex-corpo girl who had the world given to her, yet she decided not to take it. Instead, she reinvented herself. She became a doll who learned to dance. No longer a doll, she was a girl who had the 2 things she had wanted her whole life: control, freedom. After jobs, she usually found her way to Candy's apartment without planning to. It was a small place, half instruments and half chaos, always smelling faintly of lacquer and perfume. Sometimes Candy would be home, sometimes not. Tonight she was, violin in hand, bow cutting through a melody that sounded like a heartbeat in slow motion. Akiko stood in the doorway until Candy saw her. "Had fun, doll?" "No, just busy." Candy's smile was gentle, tired. "Then sit down before you fall over." Akiko did, letting her boots drip on the carpet. The music stopped. Silence filled the room, the good kind. Candy reached out, brushed rain from Akiko's sleeve. Her fingers lingered a second too long, like they always did. Neither of them mentioned it. The air between them had become a language built out of pauses. Candy's music was the only thing that made her feel like a person again. The clubs kept getting bigger, the crowds screamed her name, and every time she played, Akiko made sure to be there, somewhere in the back, listening. When the last note faded, Candy would find her in the crowd and smile, and for a second the whole world would stop. After one show, they ended up walking home together under the same broken umbrella. Candy's hand brushed hers and stayed there, fingers interlacing without a word. The rain soaked them both, but Akiko didn't care. Candy laughed, really laughed, and Akiko felt something twist behind her ribs, sharp and sweet. She almost said it then. She almost said, "I love you," but the words stayed behind her teeth. The silence between them was too precious to risk. When they reached Candy's door, Candy squeezed her hand. "You're coming in, right?" Akiko nodded. "Yeah." Inside, the city noise faded to a hum. Candy put the violin away, turned off the lights. They fell asleep on the same couch, same as always, shoulders touching. The pulse of the Karensikov slowed with her heartbeat, syncing perfectly with Candy's breathing. It felt like peace. It felt like danger. Sometimes, between jobs, she'd stand on rooftops and listen. The rain, the engines, the distant echo of Candy's music. The city whispered her name like static, feedback. She smiled at the sound, not because it was beautiful, but because it was hers. The noise never stopped, but now it belonged to her. Epilogue. Clean work, dirty city. The cigarette burns down to the filter. The neon flickers through the blinds. I wish Candy was here. The city keeps twitching and I'm still breathing. Neon veins pulse through the rain-slick streets, feeding life into the dying carcass of the city. You can taste the chrome in the air, the oil, the recycled breath of too many bodies. Every surface glows in shades of lust and decay. Somewhere in that static hum of rain, neon, and sin, I'm standing under a flickering sign that says open, even though the shop has been closed since before I was born. Forlorn Hope burned 3 days ago. I can still smell the charred synthwood and spilled bourbon in my hair. That place now just another black mark on my map, another ghost squatting in my skull. 500 eddies left in my pocket. That's not living money. That's dying slowly money. So I ping Twinkle 2 stars. TTS, my fixer. A giant with an absolutely keen mind, fooling people with his tattoos and bright hair. But he's good at keeping his chumbas working, and he knows I don't say no to dirty jobs, especially if the target deserves it. The rain's easing off when his call comes through my agent. Got 2 gigs, he says. First one's a rapist who likes his fun too young and unwilling. Second one's a ripper doc with too many corpses in his trash. I don't need to hear more. The first bastard's getting personal attention. The bar, called The Dive, which is about the only honest name in Night City. Red lighting, synthwave bleeding from busted speakers, the air thick with synth pheromones and cheap perfume. A ganger in a cracked leather jacket leans against the counter, showing off his new subdermal ink. The target. He's already half drunk, talking too loud, bragging about some poor girl he hurt. My blood hums cold. I slide into his circle like smoke, short skirt, chrome heels, a little too much skin. Street candy. He bites instantly, eyes crawling over me like greasy hands. Hey doll, he slurs. You lost. Maybe, I say, voice soft as static. Maybe I just found what I was looking for. The others laugh and hoot. He grins, showing gold-capped teeth. They think I'm prey. They always do. It takes 10 minutes of flirting, 2 shots of synth whiskey, and 1 lazy smile before he suggests the bathroom. The stall's disgusting, cracked tiles, piss on the floor, light flickering like it's nervous. Perfect. He turns to lock the door. I'm already kneeling while licking my lips seductively. He thinks he's won. He doesn't even see me slip slice out, a whisper of monowire hidden in my wrist. The hum is so faint only I can hear it, like the city purring for me alone. When he grabs my hair, I grab him. Slice flashes once, clean and silent. Blood hits my cheek warm and thick, like rain that's gone wrong. He doesn't scream, not really. More of a wet gasp as his prized manhood drops out from under him. I jump up and press my other hand over his mouth, lean close to his ear. You don't get to hurt anyone else, I whisper. He falls, clutching what's left of his manhood, a bloody, sizzling mess. I wipe the blood off with the back of my hand and look down. No satisfaction, just silence. Dice slips from the other wrist, a second wire. Finer and gentler, I wrap it around his throat. Tighten, twist, end. By the time he stops moving, I'm already thinking about the cleanup. The hardest part of killing isn't the killing, it's staying clean. Half an hour later, I'm outside again. Rain coming down harder. I walk fast, hood up, avoiding every camera I can see. The street's alive, gangs, dealers, half-broken corpos in plastic suits. No one notices me. They never do. Twinkle 2 stars, said the Rippers in Haywood. Works out of a backroom clinic. Overcharges the desperate. Experiments on the ones who can't pay. I've seen that story too many times. Rippers with too much power and too little conscience. This time, I'm the ghost they won't see coming. I wait until night again, real night, when the rain has turned to mist and the neons burned the edges off the darkness. My jacket smells like smoke and adrenaline. The knife scars on my hands itch like they're hungry. I reach Haywood by foot, sticking to the alleys. The clinic's just a warehouse with a glowing sign that says body mods, no questions. Cheap metal door, one camera. I loop the feed with a soft ping from my wristwear, just like Neo told me. Easy. Inside, it smells of antiseptic and rot. Surgical tables stained with things that don't come out, old tools humming faintly from residual charge. A small holoed plays in the corner, a smiling woman promising safe, affordable implants. Lies, all of it. The Ripper's older than I expected. Gray hair, chrome hands, tired eyes. He looks up when I step in. "What's your problem?" he asks. "Karanzikov glitch," I say. "Twitches when I move. Can you fix it?" He nods, waves me toward the table. 2,000 eddies. I smile, hand him 1,000 in cred chips. Half now, half when it works. He smirks, "Get undressed." Of course. I move slowly, deliberate, making sure his eyes stay locked on me. The city in my youth taught me long ago, power is in control, even when you're naked. Especially when you're naked. He orders me to lay down on a table and I oblige, making sure to keep my movement as alluring as I can. He touches my shoulder, pretending to check the implant. His hand slides lower, reaching for my ass. That's his last mistake. I roll sideways fast. The Karanzikov kicks in, time stretching, the world becoming syrup. Slice hums awake in my wrist. The wire cuts through the air and through his hand. The scream echoes off metal. I move before he can reach for a weapon. Dice flashes once, straight across his throat. But I'm not alone. The door bursts open. A woman, lab coat, injector, and wild eyes. She yells something, maybe a name, maybe a curse, and charges. I duck, the injector missing by an inch. The needle hisses as it hits the wall. We circle. She's shaking, scared, but she's got fight. She pulls a gun from beneath her coat. I feint left, grab her wrist, twist. The gun clatters. I bring my knee up, catch her in the gut. She staggers. One more flick of dice, just enough to open the skin. A red smile blooms across her throat. She drops, eyes wide. I stand still for a second, breathing hard. Grab her gun and put 2 bullets in the Ripper's head, turning it into a bloody mess. The only sound left is the faint whine of broken machinery and my pulse pounding in my ears. Another night, another job. I clean what I can, wipe down the surfaces, place the gun in the dead woman's hand. A staged fight, nothing more. Then I dress myself and walk out, pulling my hood up against the rain. The city swallows me whole again. Back in my apartment, if you can call it that, I strip in the dark. The lights stay off because I don't like seeing the blood on my skin until I'm ready. Hot water hisses from the cracked shower head. The scent of iron swirls up like incense. I close my eyes, let it wash over me. The noise of the city seeps through the walls. Music, sirens, shouting, laughter that sounds like it's dying halfway out. Somewhere in there, someone's making love, someone's making money, and someone's making a deal with the devil. I stand there until the water runs cold. Then I dry off, grab the bottle of whiskey from the counter, take a long swallow. It burns, but I like the pain. Keeps me human. I check the mirror. The girl staring back isn't the one from years ago. She's older now, sharper around the edges, eyes like glass shards. The red streak in her hair is fatting, but I kind of like that it looks like dried blood. I think of Twinkle Two Stars, probably sitting in some high-end bar with a dozen people laughing at his jokes. He'll call soon. He always does when there's more work. And Candy. That name slips into my mind before I can stop it. Sweet, soft, dangerous in her own way. I don't even know why I'm thinking of her tonight. Maybe it's the emptiness that comes after the violence. The part where I need something warm to fill the cold. I light a cigarette, watch the smoke twist in the pale blue glow from the city outside. Clean work, I murmur to no one. Dirty city. The cigarette burns down to the filter. The neon flickers through the blinds. I wish Candy was here, and the city keeps twitching. I fall asleep with slice and dice retracted into my arms, and the rain still whispering against the glass, like a promise or a threat. I wake up the next day feeling the emptiness from last night. I don't want to bother Candy, she's got a show coming, so I'm doing maintenance today. Disassemble the guns, clean them, put them back together. Just another routine work that needs to be done. I take few shots of whiskey and decide that I'm going to hit the town. I know what I want, sex. I take a long shower, let the water from damned broken showerhead to wash over me, positive that I can feel every single drop. I get out and slowly dry myself, thinking about what to wear. I'll go easy tonight. It always starts with the makeup, not the glittery type I used when I was still dancing, but something more sophisticated. Short dress shows my legs, and just enough cleavage to hint at what I'm after. Glen, some nightclub with a name I don't even care to remember. Couple of shots of whiskey. Off to the dance floor, I focus on the rhythm and let my body go. While dancing, I scan the nightclub for my prize and see this beautiful woman sitting at the bar. I walk to her. Then the same age-old ritual starts. Pleasant conversation while looking her straight into her eyes, and a light touch, just enough to give promise. Dancing. I push my body against hers, take her hands in mine and guide them to my hips. Encourage her to start exploring my body. A misstep, deliberate, and I stumble smoothly towards her and kiss her. Next morning, I open my eyes and stare at the ceiling. Her place. Suits me fine. I turn to look at her. She looks good laying next to me naked. I don't even recall her name, not like it matters anyway. Fuck, I think to myself. Why the fuck that woman is not Candy? And then I remember. I think I truly love her and wish that I could say that to her, but I know that I won't. She's too important to me to lose her because of my one-sided love.